Now let's just get you the latest from Australia, where that ban on social media for children under 16 is going to be implemented. It's going to take about a year's time before that social media ban is implemented. But this is a ban on social media sites that includes Instagram, TikTok, as well as other social media sites such as Facebook. Now, the social media ban to be implemented will take up to about 12 months. Existing users under 16 are, however, exempted from the ban. The ban is in order to safeguard kids, and the kids prone to online hate and bullying is what Anthony Albanese has said. He's in fact gone on to say that I've got your back. That's the message that he's putting out to parents. This, of course, also includes YouTube, gaming and messaging platforms, those platforms have been exempted. Social media sites will now have to pay a fine of $33 million or 50 million Australian dollars if they fail to protect children. So this is a ban that has been initiated by Anthony Albanese. He's been talking about it for quite a while now, and this has now been passed in the Parliament, and now what we are expecting is that this is now going to turn into a law, but it will take about a year's time before it comes into effect. Right, so this ban in terms of social media sites for children under 16. Let's just get you more on this. And to get more on this, we have our guests joining us. Professor Amanda Third, Co-Director, Young and Resilient Research Centre, Western Sydney University, joining us. We also have Jay Bhardwaj, Managing Editor of Australia Today, Harpreet Suri, leading mom influencer, and Aarti Rajaratnam, psychologist and author of Specialized in Childhood and Adolescent Mental Health, joining us as well. Amanda Third, over to you first. How difficult would you say would be the enforcement of such a law? How can such bans be implemented? Isn't this implementation of such a ban be very, very problematic, even though it might just attract a fine of 50 million Australian dollars?
Yes, that's correct. One of the big challenges here is how to make sure that this law is enforceable. There are currently no technologies that have been tried and tested and said to be up to the task of enforcing age limitations of this kind. And indeed, I think it hasn't yet dawned on Australians that banning under 16s from social media will in fact require the entire population to age verify. So I think we've got some quite challenging times ahead. There are likely to continue to be heated debates. And it's anything but clear how easily this ban will be implemented.
Right. Jay Bhardwaj, over to you. How much of this move is politically driven, and how much would you say is it from a personal point of view? Would you say this move is to woo parents ahead of the elections, or would you say the Prime Minister is a concerned father and is bringing about this ban to reduce harm on children in general?
See, I can tell you one of the online safety platform did a survey, and 77% of the Australians were supporting this ban on young kids being on social media, and I am one of them. However, there are some benefits with social media. In fact, YouTube has helped my son, who is autistic and is on the spectrum. He has learned much more than what I could, or my family, or the classroom where he goes could teach him. He has learned much more from the YouTube channels which were prescribed by his classes. So it's not all gloom and doom, but I understand Australia is one of the biggest challenge is bullying in school, and Australia was named top OECD country which where kids are being bullied, and done through social media. They are felt, or they are made to feel like they are less than others, and this harm is immense. If you see the reports about the social media impact on young kids, I think Prime Minister Albanese, he might have some electoral benefit out of it, but he's doing the right thing for Australia and Australian future at the moment.
Right. Of course, let's just also go across to Aarti Rajaratnam. What are the negative impacts of such bans in terms of children who might turn to social media for support, say, for concerns that they're not comfortable in discussing with their, say, parents or their siblings, but perhaps they turn to a stranger in such times?
See, when you ask me about a negative of a ban, there will be loopholes. Okay, children will figure out ways to get through it no matter how much you implement a law. And this is really where the problem arises. But I'd like to also place on record here that a ban like this or some kind of streamlining of this process actually has a lot more benefits than pitfalls. And I think it's about time world leaders across the globe start looking into this seriously. Because from the psychology aspect, when I work with schools, when I work with children in clinical practice, we've been noticing huge changes in the way children perceive themselves. Children react to mental health challenges, the way in which, like the previous panelists talked about, bullying and things like that, where everything can have benefits unless there is streamlining of the process. And for that, I don't think a ban will work, but a streamlining of the process. We may not be able to really help our children. Where this whole problem arises is that we are overprotecting our children in real life, where we're telling them, don't do this, don't do that, don't do that. But we just let them out in the open in the online space where there are predators, where there is information that can potentially harm their growing brain. There is information that can shame the way they think or the way they perceive the world. So there are a lot of challenges here. And the first thing that I would like to look at is the way children relate to themselves. When they relate to themselves in a way, and it's skewed because of filters, because of messaging, things like that, because of algorithms, it's going to affect the way they relate to other beings. And this is going to be a global pandemic of sorts, if not now, in the next year or so. I think so. The aspect that I'm concerned about here is, while there will be benefits, we'll need to protect our children. We'll need to help them shape their personality in real relationships. And this whole question about, I can't relate to people in my real life, so I'm going to approach strangers, that's where the problem lies. If I am going to have a child, if I'm going to be a parent, I need to make sure that I'm there. If I'm an educator, I need to be there for my child. If we set that right, we don't need to keep these excuses alive saying, I will turn to a stranger for advice. So I hope that sets the context.
Right. We also have Harpreet Suri with us. Harpreet, just the way alcohol is banned for children, as we know how harmful it is, isn't it time that we welcome such measures in terms of social media?
Absolutely. I feel it's such a monumental decision, and finally someone has taken the first step to come forward and do this. I've been, reading all these reports, mental health experts, children experts, social media experts, they all have been talking about it. Nobody did anything, but finally if Australia's come up with this, what a great decision. And we all should just try and see what they are doing. There will be issues, there'll be a bit holes in this, but I'm sure something will come out of it. And we all should be learning so much more and maybe implementing it in our country very, very soon.
Right. Would, Amanda, you say that this is just going to be a symbolic move which is not enforceable per se, because the onus basically does also lie with the parents?
That's correct. I think there's no question that technology platforms need to lift their game, and they need to do a much better job of protecting children and young people online. However, I don't think that the proposed ban is the way to ensure that those technology companies are held to account. And indeed, I think it needs to be made very clear to international audiences that I would not regard this as a world-first piece of legislation that should be followed and emulated by other countries. It has been incredibly rushed. Much of the necessary detail is not there. Experts have not been consulted, and also children and young people themselves have not had an opportunity to input into this. There are arguably much better, stronger, less harmful ways to try to protect our children than an outright ban. Indeed, two encouraging strategies that the Australian government has been getting behind are the statutory duty of care, which would compel digital platforms to be accountable to the needs, rights and aspirations of children and young people, and also a children's privacy code, which would see much stronger regulatory mechanisms around the need to protect children's data and privacy. And these are two arguably much stronger, more effective regulatory mechanisms. We've looked at these in detail. We've argued for these for a long time prior to the current ban. The ban, by contrast, has been shaped very powerfully by political and economic interests in the lead up to the next federal election. It does not have the detail, and arguably it punches holes in these other highly important pieces of regulation. So I would be very wary of holding this up as an exemplary piece of legislation. Again, I understand the need to find ways to hold technology platforms to account. And I think that the Australian E-Safety Commissioner has done a lot of wonderful work to pull together a range of regulators internationally and to begin to hold conversations about how they can work collaboratively to hold these platforms to account. And I think that is a much better way of approaching this issue. We need to point companies in the direction of designing better services for children and young people. It's not just about keeping children safe online. It's about demanding from these platforms that they develop digital experiences that are not just safe, but optimal for our children. It's time we thought much more inventively and creatively about how to maximise the opportunities that are there and to mitigate the risks.
Right. Let's also ask Jay, Jay, in regard to, does this really take away the pressure from social media companies to be more responsible and to improve their online safety?
I don't think so. I fully agree with what Amanda is saying. However, there are two parts of the problem. First is what governments can do in terms of global multicultural media giants, which Facebook or X or Instagrams are. Getting them to work is one of the most difficult thing when it comes to in terms of child safety. So what is left to governments? They have legislative powers, and that's what it seems to be working here. Anthony Albanese has tried different things in past in terms of negotiating and talking to these giants. However, that has not worked. Now they have, in Australia, in next 4 months or 5 months, elections are due, federal elections are due, and they want to take something to the Australian people. And that's why when Amanda says that it's a rushed exercise, that's what is happening here. We did a story this morning that how this ban on under 16 will be implemented is a mystery. We don't know. Yes, the law is there now that under 16s will not be able to access social media. But how? This how question, probably that's why government has given itself almost a year to address this how question. However, they will be marketing it as it world's first, whatever you want to call it. But when it comes to harm and the benefits of social media, there are majority of the reports, majority of the people understand that yes, social media is having a negative, mostly negative impact on young kids. However, my personal experience, I have explained before also, is part of the social media was positive for me. I still support the ban, but we have to work out how you want to implement it so that those benefits, be it smaller, for me, they are the biggest of the benefits. They should also be there. We don't want to live in a society where censorship or ban is the norm. We want to live in a society where duty of care is one of the biggest word in Australia. that should be at the forefront of this legislation, and somehow that is missing. So we need to work in next 1 year how and which direction Australia want to see this legislation to be implemented, how we want to negotiate with these media giants, tech giants. That will be the thing for future.
Right, Aarti, let's just talk about children who, often find ways to flout rules. They will not be the ones facing penalties. It will be the social media companies. And how unfair is that?
Again, there's this policy issue that I'm not going into. I don't want to go there because that's, like you're saying, election issues and things like that. I work with children, okay? And when I say I work with children, fines are not going to change anything. Whether you fine a child or you fine a company, it's not going to really change the whole behavior. If we've understood anything about behavior in all these years, it has a personal vested interest for everybody. So for a behavior change to happen, there is a lot. And there are a lot of areas that we need to look into. We're trying, this whole argument, this whole debate is going nowhere because we're trying to look at it in a very linear way, where if I impose a ban, suddenly everything is going to change. All of these people, it's like one of those happily ever after moments. That's not going to happen. Because for everything that you do, see, when you take some issue like obesity, I'm sure about 50 years back, obesity was not a problem because we didn't have any regulations when it came to food, when it came to, foods that were not healthy for the body, etc. We keep getting regulatory systems in place and people will find ways to overcome those. Similarly, with this, we're going to keep facing cycles and cycles of people trying to enforce some kind of, some kind of legislation, some kind of behavior, somebody is going to influence it. All of this will happen and we'll have to keep riding that wave as it comes and still find ways to protect our children. And as a mental health professional, that's the only area, because if I go into policy and things like that, this is not going to go anywhere. If I could send a message out to the parent, it would be, we will always be faced with things that we need to protect our children from. We will have to educate our children about. And more importantly, we need to take responsibility, because with freedom comes responsibility. And if we can remember that as parents, as legislators, as educators, I think we would have made a big difference.
Right, Harpreet Suri, let's just, a very quick word from you in regard to its impact as far as privacy is concerned and social connections.
See that again, sorry, I'm missing it.
Yeah, the impact of this ban on privacy and social connections.
I think it'll be better because I think now we all will be talking to each other. The kids will be more interactive with their peers and their friends rather than, being with someone who they didn't even know online. So it's going to be much, much better. And, understand from it from a mother's perspective, we all have just waited for this. That someone takes the lead, they come with, stricter laws where these companies who are making so much money out of our children have someone looks at them and tells them this is not right. So I think we don't need, they're looked after well enough and they don't need that privacy. They have their parents and their friends to look after them and be their friends, not these predators who are, watching out for them online.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I'm completely out of time at the moment, but thank you so much for this discussion.